welcome everybody to this webinar. We're very, very excited. Jax is here, but she's got her camera off because she's on a farm at the moment and it's raining and the connectivity is not that great. So if she disappears, I will carry on with the content. We'd also like to encourage you to, raise your hand if you want to ask a question while we talking. You don't need to leave it to the last, to the end. And also, if you've got some input that you'd like to give and share with us, we'd really appreciate that. So today's topic is very close to my heart, emotional intelligence, transforming your reactions, which will ultimately transform your life. And the reason why it's important to me is because I've always been quite sensitive and I wear my heart on my sleeve. And I've had to learn over the years how to control my emotions so that I could handle things in a better way. And the whole beauty of it is that if you are a person who's extremely sensitive and you get hurt very easily, or if you're somebody who is triggered and loses your temper very fast, very quickly, and then regrets it afterwards, emotional intelligence is something, it's a skill that you can learn, which is why we're here today. So it's a very, very powerful session. So I'm joined today by Jax, the artist, and she's got her camera off simply because she's in the middle, she's on a farm. There's a middle of a storm at the moment, and the lights are out apparently. So she's going to contribute, but her camera will stay off until things stabilize. If they do, she'll switch it on. If they don't, she might disappear and then we'll still carry on. But Jax, would you like to say hello?
Thank you, Caro. Hi, everyone. I'm sorry I'm sitting in the dark, but I am here with you, and I'm so excited to be co-guiding with Caro on this incredibly important journey today. I think, like Caro was saying, I think emotional intelligence makes the difference between life being an absolute roller coaster and being able to sort of navigate stormy seas with more calm and more resilience. So it's just a really powerful topic that we're discussing this evening, and learning to the emotional intelligence to navigate these stormy waters is truly life-changing. And we're going to be giving you some tips and tricks and understanding to help you develop this emotional intelligence in a way that empowers you to transform your relationships, whether they're at work or in your personal relationships, which ultimately leads to your overall well-being and your life experience ultimately.
Awesome. So are you excited to be here? I am really, really excited. And let's get cracking. So welcome, and let's unlock some emotional intelligence. But before we do that, I want to ask you a question. In the chats, type one word that describes exactly how you're feeling right now. Are you feeling relaxed? Are you feeling happy? Are you feeling stressed? What are you feeling right now? We'd love to hear from you. And then tonight, what we're going to go through, here's a quick overview. We're going to have a look at what exactly emotional intelligence is. So we break it down, and why does it matter so much? We're going to look at self-awareness, understanding your own emotions, self-regulation, how to manage your reactions, social awareness, which is all about the other people around you, empathy and connection, relationship management, how do you handle conflicts and build connections with others, and then applying EQ in real life. We'll give you some final takeaways. So I've included this quote. Every single webinar, I include a quote which really speaks to me on the topic of the webinar. And this one we had in our last webinar, but it's so, so relevant for this one as well. And I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you make them feel, by Maya Angelou. And that is so true. So here's an illustration. I thought it would be nice to just quickly tell a story on so that you could, understand why emotional intelligence is so important. So names have been changed in the story. So let's call her Emma. She's been working at her company for about 5 years and pouring her heart and soul into everything. She'd work late nights. She'd really put in that extra effort. She'd help out wherever she could, made sure that she didn't miss any deadlines. And then what happened was a management position, which was a promotion for her, opened up and she applied for it. And because of her track record, she was so confident that she would get it. But when the role was announced and it was given to one of her colleagues, Emma felt she had like all these emotions crash all over her because she put her heart and her soul into everything, and she was frustrated and angry, and she felt betrayed, like she wasn't, valued. Her value wasn't seen. And that afternoon, she stormed into her boss's office and said, "I really, really don't understand. I've worked so hard, like harder than other people around me, harder than my colleague that has got this promotion. How could you overlook me?" And she was really emotional and her voice was shaking. She was shaking, and her boss was really taken aback by this and said, "Emma, your work is outstanding, but leadership isn't just about working hard. It's about how you handle pressure, how you collaborate, and how you communicate with your team. And sometimes your frustration gets the better of you, and that affects how the team responds to you." So Emma left the office and she was even more upset now because, after all of this, all the boss could see was the negative, right? She went over this conversation in her mind and it was running around and phew, she eventually she did realize that in stressful situations, she often did let her emotions dictate her actions. And she would snap at colleagues, shut down when things don't go her way, just withdraw instead of, facing the conflict and working through it, and assuming the worst. So the question that I'm asking here is, what could have happened if she approached the situation differently? This is quite a good illustration of handling emotions and the importance of understanding your own emotions and the emotions of those around you in the workplace, because it wasn't only about Emma's reaction to this current situation, when she flew off the handle, when she went to her boss, but it was also about consistently how she'd managed her emotions in the office, and her frustrations often got to the better of her, and she wasn't commanding the respect that she was looking for. So this is why learning how to manage your emotions is so much better. If she had just taken a step back and calmed down and looked at it rationally before she went to her boss, instead of flying off the handle and just, letting her emotions get ahead of her, she would probably have had a far different outcome after speaking to her boss, you know. So emotional intelligence doesn't mean that you need to suppress your emotions all the time. What it does mean is that you need to understand your emotions and learn to manage them in a way that leads to better outcomes. So the very, very good news is that this is a skill that you can learn. So if you're not strong at it right now, that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're 25 years old or 55 years old. You can still work at developing the skill of emotional intelligence. Okay, so let's get into the meaty bits of this webinar. So what is emotional intelligence and why exactly does it matter so much? I think the story that we've just listened to illustrated quite, quite well how important emotional intelligence is and how it can impact your daily life. I mean, it's not only in the workplace that emotional intelligence helps. It's also, with your family, with your friends, especially when it comes to having difficult conversations, managing conflicts, etc. So
So,
emotional.
Kara, maybe sorry to interrupt before
Yeah.
you go into the definition.
Yes.
Maybe just if we could ask our participants if they can relate to the experience that you've just shared, the story,
Yes.
and to see if there's a situation that they've ever experienced themselves where um, they had to deal with an emotion, either professionally or personally, and sort of had to take some time to reflect on the truth of the situation. So maybe just for each person to think about a situation or a similar story that they could share where they could have handled the situation better with a little bit more emotional intelligence. And if anybody feels brave enough, if they want to just share their story with us so that we understand what's actually brought them to this webinar tonight.
Yes, that's an excellent idea. Thanks, Jax. Would anybody like to share a story? You can pop it in the chat. You can hop onto video and chat to us if you want to. Okay, well, feel free to put your story in the chat and we can always, you can share later on in the webinar. All right, so let's go down to the definitions then. So understanding EQ. So emotional intelligence is also known as EQ, which is emotional quotient. It's the ability to recognize, to understand and manage your own emotions while also being able to recognize and influence the emotions of others. So it's not just about you. It's broken down into these 4 key areas, which are displayed on the screen. The first is self-awareness, so understanding your own emotions that you're feeling inside. Self-regulation, how to manage your reactions. Social awareness is recognizing the emotions of those around you that you're interacting with and trying to understand how, their point of view. And then relationship management, which is communicating effectively. So a higher EQ will lead to better relationships, improved mental well-being, and even greater success at work. And isn't that what we're all looking for? Okay, so what we'd like to ask you to do is when you think about your current emotional intelligence on a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being very, very poor and 10 being really excellent, where do you see yourself fitting in at this point in time? I think the most important thing is to be real, to be honest with yourself. Because if you, like, if I say I'm a 5, so I'm in the middle, there's lots of room for improvement. Yes, I've come a long way, but there's still lots of improvement. At least you're being honest with yourself and you know where you are and how much work needs to be put in. It's pointless saying, "Oh, I'm really good. I'm amazing at emotional intelligence. I'm an 8," if you're sitting down at a 4, because then you're just fooling yourself. I see there's something in the chat here. A 7. So Daniel is a 7. Sarah's a 7. So quite strong, but you've got some work to do. That's excellent. Bazile is a 6. Well done. Thank you for being brave and for owning that. Okay, so moving on. Jax, are you still with us?
I'm still here, Caro. Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. You're going to chat
Cool.
about
So we're gonna,
self-awareness.
yeah. So Caro, that's the first and most crucial step in emotional intelligence is self-awareness. And when we understand our emotions, when we can give our emotions a name, because sometimes they're just these feelings that we don't even know what's going on in our bodies. But if we can give it a name, if we can locate it, if we understand like how it's actually playing itself out and how it's shaping our decisions and our interactions and relationships, then we can actually learn to manage them better to get the outcomes and the results that we actually want. So the self-awareness is the most important piece. It's the first step. So I'm just going to ask our participants to think of that experience that I asked them to consider a little bit earlier, when they felt triggered, frustrated, upset, and just think about what triggered you and how you reacted. And maybe just pop a word in the chat that describes your reaction and maybe even the emotion you felt at the time.
Great. Okay, I see that there's something in the chat. Still our numbers. Nancy is a 4. Okay, well, when you're ready, you can pop the words in the chat. Are you going to talk? Nancy, I see you've got a question. Hi. Nancy, you're on mute. There we go. Hi.
Hi. Good evening, everyone. In my case, apparently, it was a bit of a different situation, because I was given an instruction. Okay, maybe for a bit of a background. I started in a new department that I worked for 7 years, 2 years ago. So basically, the organization restructured, and so the line of command above me, everyone was new. So basically what happened, I was instructed to implement certain things in a certain way. And I was frustrated because I had, I would say, my smaller personal strategy of how I was going to manage everything. So after 2 months, everything that I couldn't do because I had to adhere to the instructions because of the authority backfired. So we are back to my smaller strategy that I could not exercise. So what helped me in this case, I called a friend that was in a superior position, and he advised to say, this is how senior leadership thinks. They don't understand all the details as much as you understand. Just cooperate and you'll find your way. And it's a payback time. I'm frustrated because I'm far way backwards because I anticipated the position I'm sitting at.
Thank you for sharing, Nancy. That's, yeah. So how are you feeling today in comparison to how you felt 2 years ago when you started this position?
I feel like I have to trust my instincts. Not everything that I can be thinking as a personally might be wrong. But I think maybe I just need to learn how to exercise my powers, regardless of the levels. So maybe emotional intelligence can help me in that regard in terms of approaching certain aspects of the processes.
That makes sense. Thank you so much for sharing. Is there anyone else who would like to share?
Maybe just a question for Nancy, Caro, is what do you do when you feel that frustration in your body? How do you deal with it? How do you manage it?
I'm still struggling. I must be honest. I think I only react afterwards by maybe taking a walk or go for hiking over the weekends. But I think I'm still in a pit. I'm still in that position.
Okay. So I think the key to being aware is to be mindful, right, of when you are feeling an emotion, whether it be frustration, like just to notice, where do you feel it in your body? Okay. Is it in the pit of your stomach? Is it in your heart? Is it in your throat? Where do you feel it? So just notice where in your body that emotion is sitting and is located. And then also, like, what does that feel like as a felt sense in your body? Is it tightness? Is it spiky? Is it moving? Is it still? Is it big? Is it small? Is it on the surface? Is it deep inside? So you really want to get a sense of where is that, because an emotion is actually an energy in motion. And what happens is when it's in your body, it's the energy is starting to feel stuck, or it's just calling your attention, right? That's what it wants. It wants a little bit of attention. So the first step is just to practice that mindfulness. Okay, this is what I'm feeling. And just like to take a pause before you react, before you do anything, is just pause and feel it. And observe this emotion without any judgment, without blaming anybody, just feel the emotion. So there's a very useful tool. It's called the stop technique. So the first thing is you just stop and take a pause when you've been triggered, when you feel angry, frustrated, sad, upset, any of those kind of emotions that can be a bit overwhelming. So you just pause. Then you take a deep breath. Okay, and it might need more than one deep breath. It might need several deep breaths, depending on how big the emotion is. So that's why taking a walk is really useful. It's just taking some space and breathing, just to give that emotion space. Then you want to observe the emotion, like just watch it, notice the emotion. And then think about, so now what is the outcome or the intention? What do I actually want to achieve here? Okay, in this situation. So that there's a little bit of clarity in terms of what's my desired results. And then okay, how do I want to approach this situation, right? Okay.
Thank you for that, Jax.
I don't know if that is useful for you or valuable, thinking about your situation, whether that gives you a new tool in the moments that you actually feel frustrated.
It does, Jax. It is helping, I must be honest, because I was just sharing with someone after work that I'm even trying to exercise the prioritization list, but I get so much distracted in such a way that at the end of the day, I'm frustrated because I hardly get into.
It's okay, Nancy. You can just breathe. I can see that you're getting emotional right now. So I want you just to use that little tool. Just stop, pause, take a breath, and just sit with that emotion for a little while. We'll come back to you. We'll check in with you a little bit later to see how you're doing.
Thanks, Jackson. Thanks, Nancy. We really appreciate you sharing. I think this stop technique that you've shared here, Jax, is incredibly powerful. I mean, especially the pause, because that pause, if you take a few seconds to pause before you react, it actually can create a buffer and help, slow down the reactions so that you don't do something that you'll regret later. Okay, is there anyone else that wants to share, or can we carry on to the next one? The next point. Okay, so the next point is, now that we've looked inside of us and understood our own emotion, it's about self-regulation, which is managing your reaction. Okay, so someone has said something to you that has made you really angry, and instead of like throwing your toys around and acting like a 2-year-old, you take that pause, you acknowledge that you're angry, and now it's learning to control it so that you don't throw your toys around. This is what self-regulation is all about. Okay, there are quite a few techniques that you can use to regulate your reactions. Nancy mentioned that she goes for a walk, but you don't always have that luxury of being able to walk away from a situation, and just, movement actually uses up energy. So it helps you to, the emotion, that's that energy that's building up inside of you that needs to come out. Taking a walk is actually a really, really good way of, helping you to process that emotion. So choosing how we respond instead of reacting impulsively is what we're trying to aim for. Using the stop technique along with these powerful tools can help you greatly. The first is mindful breathing. And mindful breathing, I believe so much in breath work. It's such a healing process, physically and mentally. And even if all you do is you close your eyes and you breathe in, for 3 or 4 times, just breathe in intentionally, fill your lungs right up so that your stomach and everything, your diaphragm is full, and then you breathe out intentionally 3 or 4 times. If that's all you do, you don't have to do anything complicated. It can really help to calm you down, your heart rate, so that you're not feeling so overwhelmed and stressed. Second thing you can do is reframing your thoughts. I mentioned this in all my webinars, I think, so far, because reframing is actually such an incredible, it's really, really powerful. All you're doing is you're taking a step back and saying, hold on, maybe there's a different way that I can look at this. It's about changing your perspective. So when someone says something to you, you take a step back and you say, okay, could they be meaning something else? What could they be meaning? am I maybe jumping to conclusions here? So that's about reframing your thoughts. And then the third is the anchoring technique, which is to create a mental safe place to reset emotions. So anchoring is a really, really powerful tool. And what I'd like to know is if anybody here would like to work with either Jax or I to set an anchor. It is something we could possibly do as a group, but it does take time. So I don't think we can fit it into this webinar now. But if there's an interest, we can definitely schedule something. So what creating an anchor does is you've all heard of things that trigger you. So let's take an example. You walk into a house and there are cookies baking, and suddenly you feel a whole sense of happiness and excitement, because when you were a kid, your grandmother used to bake cookies, and when you walked into her home, you felt you were in a safe space, and that smell just triggered that feeling again. So what you're doing with the anchoring is you creating a specific anchor that you can use when you get into a stressful situation. So the minute you catch yourself that you're reacting rather than controlling your response, you can quickly fire that anchor, and your subconscious mind will then calm your whole system down. So it sounds like it's magic. It's pretty simple and straightforward, but it actually really does work. So if anybody's interested in creating an anchor, a positive anchor that can help you in stressful situations, please reach out to us, let us know in the chat, and then either Jax or myself can, be in touch with you and we can help you with this. Or if there's a group of you that wants to do it, we can set up a group call to do it. Okay, so guided breath work. Would you like to do an exercise on guided breath work? Jax, do you want to talk us through simple guided breath work? Yes.
Yeah, I have to share this because I'm sitting here in the dark and there's 2 praying mantises that have actually come onto my computer screen, like they're hovering around the screen. And so I just feel like I have to mention that as an additional option in terms of a strategy. If you are a spiritually connected person, and you do pray, that is actually a really powerful way to regulate your nervous system, is to go into a prayerful state or a meditative state. So I'm just, because they appeared, the praying mantises, I felt that I'm being asked to share that with the group. When you feel like something is outside of your control and you don't know what you're going to do, some emotions you can manage and you can find solutions, and sometimes they're bigger than us and we don't know what to do. Often prayer is a good way to get insights and guidance and direction for a way forward. So I thought I'd just share that just because the praying mantises are here.
Thanks, Jax. But that's actually such an important point that should actually be on this slide: prayer and meditation. Because if that is how if you are a spiritually inclined person, then prayer definitely will help, and meditation and all. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, so let's go into a little bit of a breathwork exercise together, so that you just have an experience, guys, of this little tool. So I'm going to invite you all to just close your eyes right now. And just like, we're going to slow down your breathing a little bit. So we start off just by taking an inhale deeply for 4 seconds. So as you're inhaling, you're going to count 1, 2, 3, 4. You're going to hold it for 4 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4. And you're going to exhale for 6 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So the next one, you're going to do it again, but you're going to do it on your own. I'm not going to count. So inhale for 4, hold for 4, and exhale for 6. So that's like a really quick breathing technique that you can just use to help yourself self-regulate. Yeah, maybe you can pop in the chat bar how you're feeling now after taking a couple of deep breaths.
Thank you, Jax. That's particularly helpful if your heart is racing, like if you're in a situation and you feel that your heart is racing or your knees are wobbling, like you're shaking from either stress or nerves or anxiety. That breathing technique that Jax has just shared is very useful in those situations. And you don't have to take a lot of time to do it, which is also great. Okay, so moving on, our next step is social awareness, which is empathy and connection. And this now moves from us and our experience to the experience of those that we're interacting with. So empathy is seeing the world through another person's eyes, which can be easy, or some people, do this naturally, and some people really, really struggle with it. So, Jax, do you want to talk a bit more and expand on this?
Yeah, sure, Caro, thank you. So social awareness is actually about being able to pick up on emotional cues of other people. So it's about being able to sort of understand what they might be feeling in a particular moment and being able to read and interpret what's going on for them. And the more we are able to see things from another person's perspective, the more empathetic we are, the better we're actually able to connect with them and the better we're able to relate to them. So, Caro, I'm going to use this example. I'm going to ask you to show with your facial expressions a couple of emotions because your video camera's on. So, can you show me what joy looks like? And that's your base state, Caro. So that's probably an easy one for you to do.
Yeah.
Yay. Now, yeah. So now show me what it looks like if you're confused.
I don't know.
Oh, there you go. There it is. I don't know. Yeah, it's a look that I don't know. Now show me a little bit of frustration. What would frustration look like? Yeah, okay. And now show me sadness.
That's difficult. I don't know. Sadness is hard for me now.
Now give me an emotion that I'm not asking you for. Choose an emotion that I haven't mentioned. And I'm going to ask people to guess what that feeling is and just pop it in the chat.
I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, Jax, you're putting me in the spot here now.
Okay, Okay, so you've been relieved and shocked and all those other wonderful things all at once.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's great, Kara. So this is a powerful way to develop empathy, is to actually just be able to read people's emotions through their facial expressions, their body language. And if you fine tune this, if you start calibrating, it's like a bit of a radio wave. If you start tuning in to people's radio waves through their body language, their facial expressions, you'll get a sense of what they're actually feeling. You get better. It's a skill you can also learn and practice to get better at reading the body language and the facial expressions to see what emotions they're experiencing. And another tool is actually active listening. So it's really listening to people. The tone of voice they use is going to give you clues, the pitch of their voice, the speed at which they're speaking. All of those little signals are giving you cues as to what somebody might be feeling. Like if somebody's really angry, they're going to raise their voice. They're probably going to be speaking much quicker than if they're calm and relaxed. They'll be speaking much more slowly. So these are just listening to the voice and what people are saying, their words give you lots of insight into what emotions they might be feeling. Yeah.
Thank you, Jax. Also something that works for me and helps for me is if I'm feeling a certain emotion, and this comes back to the self-awareness and why self-awareness is actually the basis of emotional intelligence. You know, it's really your starting point. So if you're feeling happy, look at yourself in the mirror and see what is your body language like, what are your facial expressions like, etc., because that will help you to understand other people as well, you know, because us as human beings, a lot of us show emotions in a similar way. So it will help you to pick up on other people's emotions if you know what you look like when you're in that state. I hope that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Jax, do you want to talk about this?
Yeah, so I'm just curious. This is actually one of my paintings that I did like quite unconsciously, you know, just a watercolor painting. And I'm curious for you guys to share with me, when you look at this painting, what do you see in this painting? And maybe what do you feel? And you can just pop it in the chat bar as you look at it. What feeling does it give you? And then what do you notice? What do you see in that painting? And I'll explain to you why I'm asking this question once we get some of the responses. Okay, let's see. Flowers in a forest. Okay, anybody else? Destructive. Okay, anybody else? This really works if everybody puts something in, because we get to see that different people will actually see different things in this very same painting. And what that shows us is the difference in perspective, you know, the way our brains work. So somebody will see flowers, right? I see some bubbles in there, you know, and I see faces as well. So I think the point that we're making here is that the way we see the world, our perspective, is so different. 3 different people, 4 different people, blooms, fruits, and flowers will see different things from the same image and interpret it differently. And that's why listening and learning to hear one another's perspectives is so powerful and so important when we're talking about emotional intelligence. Is there anything you want to add to that, Caro, around perspective and listening?
I think you've hit the nail on the head there. And, you know, you can have 6 people sitting around a table and they will all be looking at the same thing and see it completely differently or interpret it completely differently. Just like you'll get, 6 people who go to exactly the same party, they sit at exactly the same table in exactly the same restaurant and will have completely different experiences. So, you interpret things that happen to you based on your past experiences, your situation that you're in life. Maybe you're in a nice job with, you don't have financial struggles, but your friend that went with you is really struggling financially and is looking for a job. So their perspective will be different. And be mindful of this when you're interacting with other people. It really does help to create better connections and outcomes at the end of the day. Okay, let me close that. Right, so the fourth point is all about relationship management, handling conflicts, and building connections. Life is not all about those pretty flowers and rosy moments. There are many times when you have to have those difficult conversations and where you have to manage conflicts in a constructive manner. And emotional intelligence really does help you to manage situations, stressful situations, conflict situations, difficult conversations far better, than if you were all emotional and everyone was emotional in the conversation. What tends to happen then is like you get a whole whirlwind in the room and nobody really gets anything done, and nobody, you don't really come to an outcome if everybody's emotional. So how do you master difficult conversations and handle these difficult, what are the tips and how can you make it better, handle it better? So 3 key strategies are, firstly, is to use assertive communication. And assertive communication is expressing yourself very clearly and in a calm way. So it's not about, forcing your point across or anything like that. All it is that you're confident, you're calm, and your communication is extremely clear. So you're keeping the emotions, more evenly tempered. The second thing that you can do, which we've already touched on, is to read nonverbal clues. So acknowledge words and feelings that the other people in the conversation have, to make sure that you've understood correctly. So, for instance, when they say something, repeat it back, but repeat it back in your own words, saying, I just want to make sure that I've understood it correctly. This is what you've said, and this is how you'd like the outcome to be, or whatever. So you repeat it back in your own words so that they can acknowledge that you've understood it correctly. Pay attention to their body language, to the expressions on their faces. What is the pitch and the tone of their voice? Are they talking up there and they're talking very fast because they're very stressed, or are they calm and, talking slowly and a lower tone of voice? All those things are clues, and become more aware of them so that you can, have a better outcome. Then the third is, when navigating conflicts, what really helps is to use I statements instead of blaming. An example would be, for instance, you make me feel really, really upset when you do this. Okay, that's a blame statement. Instead of saying that, you would say, I feel really upset when this happens. Or I feel unheard when we talk. Instead of saying, you never listen to me. Rather say, I feel unheard when we talk. So, the minute you say you, the other person is really putting their walls up and they're defensive and they shut down. They switch off. So you won't be able to get your message across to them. When you take on the I statements, you're owning it and you're acknowledging that this is how I feel. Okay, but you're not blaming them for how you feel. And it tends to be a more constructive way to handle conflict situations and difficult conversations. So, Jax, I don't know if you want to add something to this before we move on.
I do, Carol. I think it's such an important, there's one sort of last strategy, and that is to really know what you need in a particular situation. So it's like giving somebody a roadmap to meet that need. When you say, and what I'm really needing to hear, to feel like I've been heard, is for you to just let me finish what I'm saying and then tell me what you've heard. So that you're actually giving them the clarity of, like, for example, you got so many competing priorities. It's saying to your boss, like, I need to understand what your top 3 priorities are, because like otherwise I feel overwhelmed. So it's like, really, what do you need that's going to make your life easier and better? And first you need to understand, what is it that you need? And will that person be able to meet that need? Because in the expression, you do want to have a sense that that person will be willing to meet that need if you express it. But I think often as human beings, we just are a little bit out of touch with what we need, first of all, and then we have difficulty expressing that. So I think it's quite a powerful strategy as well.
Yeah. And also, if the other person doesn't meet our need, how can we expect someone else to meet our need if we don't even know what it is ourselves? But then we get upset because it isn't, us human beings can be really strange sometimes, but it happens. So thank you for sharing that with us.
Sure.
Right.
No problem.
So applying EQ in our real life, some final takeaways. Jax, do you want to run with this?
Sure. So it's not just a concept, Caro, emotional intelligence. It's a practice, okay? It's something that we need to work on. It doesn't happen overnight. As human beings, we're complex. We have lots of different emotions that we need to master. And so I'd like to invite our participants to think of just one area of emotional intelligence that you would like to work on improving, and just stick your answers in the chat for us. And then I'm going to share with you a quick and easy to follow growth plan for developing emotional intelligence. So practicing daily self-awareness. You remember, like I spoke about, being able to name an emotion. Where does it sit in your body? What does it feel like? You can even say, does it have a color or a shape or a texture? So journaling about the emotions to really get a handle on them is really useful. Then practicing your breathing techniques when you do get triggered at an emotional level. Remember, we did the 4 breaths, 4 seconds in, hold it, and then 6 seconds out. So just practicing that breathing technique. Active listening and practicing empathy, putting yourself in somebody else's shoes. What might they be feeling in this moment? And then, rather than approaching a conflict with defensiveness, is to get curious. What might be going on for that other person in this moment, where we see things from different perspectives? let me get curious about somebody else's view of the world, and see if I can then relate to that in some way or have compassion for that and make a connection rather than separate or feel so different from that person that we can't find common ground. So this might be a big mindset shift for you, but the first step is awareness. And if you implement even one of these at a time, because it might be a bit overwhelming to try to do all four at the same time, and you get it right. So you practice that journaling and naming emotions before you move on to the next one. And you'll definitely see a shift and an improvement in your emotional intelligence. You'll begin to handle conflict better, and your life will feel a whole lot lighter.
Yeah. I think, another thing is that emotions, it's okay to be emotional, because human beings are supposed to be emotional. And sometimes you feel like you can't be emotional. You're not allowed to be angry, or you're not allowed to cry. We've been brought up to believe that men don't cry. But emotions are actually healthy. They're there for a reason and there for a purpose. So acknowledging them and allowing yourself to process them and to work through them, taking a walk, find what works for you, relaxing in a bubble bath, or going and having a shower, or, listening to some music just to, process that emotion is very healthy. Is there anything else you'd like to say before we move on to the wrap up, Jax?
Like you said, I think there's a belief that says show emotion is actually a weakness.
Yeah.
That belief, and showing emotion is a weakness. But as human beings, we are actually, the truth of it is we are emotional beings and we are vulnerable. And when we don't accept our emotions over time, they can actually derail us if we don't open ourselves up to them. That's the first thing I wanted to say.
Yeah,
and I've forgotten
they can also cause physical illnesses if you don't acknowledge your emotions and work through them and process them, and let them come out. It causes physical harm.
So that was the second point.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt.
No.
The second point is often we get triggered. What can be being triggered is actually an earlier trauma. And sometimes we overreact at an emotional level. So if you find that an emotion is actually, it's an overreaction, it's bigger than it should be, then you know that something in you might have had an earlier trauma triggered. And then you're not in charge anymore. It's not just an ordinary everyday emotion. And there's then some deeper kind of processing, healing work. And you might want to get some help and support to actually work through that, because it's not just a normal emotion. So just to be aware of that,
Yes, absolutely.
If it feels beyond your control with all of these tools and techniques that we're actually sharing with you.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks for bringing that point across, Jax, because it's important to know that if you do feel you are not able to help yourself through these emotions and you need to get help, professional help, then please do so. There are people that can help you if you're struggling with something. Okay. Right. And then we'd like to say thank you very much for joining us. And let's stay connected. Jax and I are both here. If you'd like to work on, emotional intelligence or any other topic, you need some help. It is a lifelong journey that you're taking. We're here to continue to support you. If you found value in this, we'd invite you to join us for deeper transformation, if you need to work with us coaching, please reach out to both Jax and myself. Jax does resonance repatterning. I'm an NLP practitioner. Jax, I don't know if you want to quickly explain what resonance repatterning is.
So it's basically a form of energy healing, and it says we will only experience something that we resonate with, and we cannot experience something that we do not resonate with. So, for example, if I spoke about trauma, so resonance repatterning is a system that helps us identify the root cause of traumatic experiences and how they are affecting how we show up in our lives at the moment. And it gives us also, it's working with your nervous system to identify the root cause of a problem, and then also working with your nervous system to find what is the way that we can shift a pattern at an energetic level, whether it's sitting mentally, emotionally, physically, or spiritually. So that's in a nutshell what resonance repatterning is.
Thanks, Jax. Okay, and then of course, Jax and I are still super excited about our soul healing adventure taking place in Bali from 5 to 20 September this year. Jax, do you want to say something about this?
So, guys, we have put together this amazing adventure where we are taking a group of heart-centered individuals who are going through life transitions, who are looking for a sense of purpose, but also wanting to have some fun and build some new friendships. And really, the ultimate is to experience a sense of freedom, overcoming some of your own fears and doubts about the next phase, facing uncertainty. And we've put together this amazing adventure, which is a combination of beautiful in Bali, which is one of the most beautiful natural nature immersions in the world. And it is also a spiritual healing mecca at the moment. It's just bursting with healers and people who are there to help people on their spiritual journeys. And we're doing 15 days, and there's sort of 3 components that we've broken it down into. So it's actual activities and experiencing all that Bali has to offer. Then we have days of healing, where we have very specific processes and exercises that we will engage with to do the healing and spiritual growth pieces of the journey. And then the third part is obviously days of rest in between, just to recuperate and really connect with yourself and with the other people that we are going to be journeying with. So, Caro, is there anything else you want to add to what I've said?
I think what I'd like to add is the Soul Healing Adventures is a long-term plan. So what we are doing, we're going to be doing this on an ongoing basis. We want to travel the world and find, places all over the world where, your soul can heal. And it's a very personal journey. So, you right in the beginning, what we're going to do is we're going to ask you to set an intention of what you want to get out of the experience. And because it's such a personal journey, we've created the Soul Healing Community. And once a month, we're going to have an interactive Soul Healing Community discussion online. So we had our first one on Tuesday, and our next one is on the 24th of April, I think it is, 7:30 p.m.
Right.
And in the April one, what we're going to do is Jax and I will share the nitty-gritties, what the itinerary will look like, what does the hotel accommodation look like, etc. And you can ask us questions about the logistics. So it's going to be all about the experience. But we want to build a community of heart-centered people, a safe place where we can share with each other, where we can encourage each other and be there for each other, and talk about very, whatever's relevant at the time, that's pressing on our hearts. So, Jackson and I were talking about how uncertain things are in the world at the moment, and no matter where you are, there's political uncertainty, there's economical uncertainty, there are even industries that are being disrupted, and people who were once very secure in their job, their whole roles are changing because of things like AI and things like that. So a journey like this can help you to reconnect with yourself, to find your purpose, to rediscover your purpose, to figure out where you're going. You need to take a change of direction. Where do you want to go? They say change is as good as a holiday, and a holiday is definitely a very good catalyst for change. Yeah, so we're inviting you to join us. And then our next webinar will be end of May. We're taking a break in April, but it's going to be all about the power of play. Because us as, the world is so serious, and you get so stressed with your job, and there's just so many demands coming at you all the time. A lot of us have forgotten how to play and how to have fun and how to laugh. So Jackson and we want to talk about this because, let's have some fun. So we're not 100% sure what we're going to do, but it's all going to be about playing, about having fun, connecting with your inner child, learning to laugh again. Jax, you want to say anything?
Yeah, I think, Caro, people might misunderstand the power of play, because it's not, yes, it is about having fun.
Jax is fun. I think Jax disappeared there. Okay, so I think Jax has disappeared. She's got a storm there where she is. But anyway, we do underestimate how powerful play is and how important it is to learn to play again. This is one of the reasons why we've chosen this topic. And we will be sharing more information on what will be covered, etc. But if you would like to have some fun, to learn to play again, please join us on the 29th of May. We'd love to see you there, and look out on social media. So LinkedIn, Facebook, our mailers, we're going to share more information on what we're going to do. Yeah, and I just would like to thank each and every one of you of taking the time to be here tonight, to invest in yourself, because learning about emotional intelligence is taking the first step to improving your emotional intelligence. And we're here for you if you need any further help. So does anyone have any other questions or anything they'd like to share before we close? Okay, so I see Sarah has shared the link to the Soul Healing Adventure in the comments, but we will. So Sarah is going to send you an email with a link to the replay, a copy of the workbook. We've put a little workbook together that you can use with prompters to work on developing your emotional intelligence. And we're going to send you a copy of the slides. So please look out for an email. It will take a few days because we need to edit the video, etc. Yeah, and we hope to see you at our next adventure or webinar or activity. Thank you. Love you guys lots. Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.